Hello everyone. My childhood was in the 90s, a difficult time for post-Soviet countries, devastation, inflation, default. But those were adult problems, and we, the kids, spent hours on end, playing video games. If not every child, then every second child had at least an 8-bit console, and a TV like this at home, or like this one. Looking at them, I have warm and nostalgic memories of that bygone era. But these little dinosaurs don't have any collectible value. Nowadays, they don't come across as often as before, but they aren't particularly scarce even today. And that's why I'm going to take them apart for parts today. But don't worry, this isn't being done to extract precious metals. We will give the pile of components a second life. We'll assemble something useful from the parts of old Soviet televisions. I should note that I plan to release at least 3 videos. Each of them will cover 3 devices that can be assembled from parts of old televisions like these. I have 2 wonderful specimens in my hands. One of them is the tube-based Electron 738, and the other is already transistor-based. Both units were gifted by a neighbor. One of them even works. So, to start, we need to disassemble the televisions. I decided to take apart both at once so I don't have to get my hands dirty twice. After several hours of struggle, we end up with a pile of various boards, transformers, chokes, and even loudspeakers. In this pile, you can find ready-made boards that can be reused without modifications. For example, a low-frequency amplifier board based on the ULF chip K174UN7. This is a monophonic amplifier with an output power of about 4.5 watts, and it has many imported counterparts. This chip was widely used in Soviet television equipment. This board has almost everything necessary for the chip to work. But I preferred to design my own version of the board, which will have everything necessary, including a standard 3.5mm jack, an output for speakers, a volume control, and a power connector. I decided to use imported components in the chip circuitry, because the condition, especially of the capacitors on the original board, was less than ideal. All you need for the amplifier to work is any 12-volt power adapter, preferably stabilized with an output current of 1 to 1.5 amps. Then you just need to input an audio signal from a smartphone, and that's it. This thing is quite loud, the sound is tolerable, and the quality is similar to average computer speakers. Overall, it's listenable. For the next construction, I took the board of the SMRK21 radio channel submodule. The palladium-containing capacitors stand out on it. I will be desoldering them. No, I'm not planning to sell them. These are not scrap, but rather quite good radio components. That will be useful for the next construction. And here is the construction itself. You might call it a radio bug, but I'll just call it a radio microphone or a baby monitor. A very useful gadget if you have kids. You install this device in the children's room, then turn on the radio, for example, on your phone, and listen to everything happening in the nursery. With the help of such a monitor, you'll always know when your baby starts crying, although in some cases you might not even need it, because they cry loudly. Besides capacitors, we also need a transistor. On such boards, you can find various transistors. Sometimes it's a KT368, sometimes a KT3109. The latter is a PNP transistor, and the circuit needs to be slightly modified. In general, we need an NPN transistor with a cutoff frequency of 150 to 200 MHz or higher. This is probably the main criterion for the transistor. In general, transistors and capacitors of this type can also be found on other boards, for example, in the SKM24 channel selector. I took some of the small capacity capacitors from there. The assembled transmitter needs to be tuned to the desired frequency. Tuning is done by changing the components of the oscillating circuit, or simply by compressing and stretching the coil turns. But it's long and tedious. It's easier to take one of the components of the oscillating circuit, the capacitor or the coil, with an adjustment. Adjustable capacitors or coils can also be found in the previously mentioned module. I prefer to use a coil with an adjustment. It's just that with capacitors, there can be a change in frequency depending on external factors. The adjustable coil is very simple in its design, a plastic frame on which the coil is wound. Inside, there is a thread into which a ferrite rod is screwed. The inductance of the coil changes depending on the depth of penetration of the rod. That is, by turning the rod one way or the other, we change the operating frequency of the transmitter. In our case, the coil is wound on a frame with a diameter of 6 mm, the number of turns is 6, and the wire diameter is 0.6 mm. In short, all sixes. Microphone. How could we do without it? Any electret microphone will work in this circuit. Unfortunately, you won't find one in televisions, but there's plenty of them in other junk. You can get one from old tape recorders, non-working phones, and so on. I used a modern microphone, although to maintain the atmosphere, you could use a Soviet one, like the 3 Malawian kwaches. Let's not forget that the microphone has polarity. The ground is the contact that connects with the microphone's casing. This time, I made the circuit board using home lab technology. The size isn't particularly important since we're not planning to use this device for illegal eavesdropping, so stealth isn't necessary. As an antenna, you can use a piece of insulated single-core or multi-core wire 52, 70 centimeters long. For convenience, the wire can be wound around a plastic tube or a piece of hot glue, and the coils can be fixed with glue as shown in the video. The setup is simple. You need to set the radio receiver to a frequency range from 88 to 108 MHz, preferably between 90 and 95 MHz. Next, by slowly rotating the ferrite core of the coil, we tune the transmitter to the desired frequency, or we simply take a non-contact frequency meter, measure the transmitter's frequency, and then set the receiver to the same frequency. Well, the latter is relevant if you happen to have such a frequency meter lying around. I'll leave a link to a similar one in the description. The sensitivity is quite good, although it all depends on the microphone. You can hear a whisper in a medium-sized room. The reception range will depend on many factors, the presence of walls, the quality of the receiver, and so on. In direct line of sight, for example, in a field the reception range exceeds 100 meters when using a regular smartphone as a receiver. The device's current consumption from 9-volt sources is minimal. It also works, by the way, from a lower voltage. I tried it with 3 volts, everything was great, but the power, and consequently the reception range, will be less in that case. It's very convenient to use an 18650 standard lithium-ion cell as a power source, complemented with a charging and protection board like this one. I must warn you that the material in this video is purely for informational purposes. The author bears no responsibility for your actions. Remember, the use of special equipment for illegal information gathering, as well as the illegal acquisition of information using such equipment, is punishable by law. Keep this in mind. Even if you buy a harmless transmitter on AliExpress or make it yourself, but try to sell or use it for eavesdropping, that is a criminal offense. The third design is a low-power voltage converter from 12 to 220 volts. Unfortunately, I was unable to find the original source. If anyone has information, please email me at the address provided in the description of this video. I first saw this simple circuit in Yevsev's book, Electronic Devices for the Home. Such a converter can easily power small network loads, for example smartphone chargers, LED lamps, fluorescent lamps, and so on. The maximum output power of the inverter is 20 watts, and the output voltage of our converter is constant, which allows you to connect any loads to it, except for those that include iron 50 Hz transformers and asynchronous electric motors. Important: the converter does not have stabilization, so the output voltage will fluctuate in one direction or another depending on the supply voltage and the power of the connected load. But in most cases, this is not so critical. Another drawback is the lack of any protection, so you should not short the output. The circuit is a push-pull type, representing a symmetrical multivibrator. The transistors of the pre-output and output stages form an analog of a composite switch. Therefore, if desired, each pair of transistors can be replaced with a single composite one, for example, a KT827, and extract much more power, naturally by increasing the size of the transformer. Bipolar NPN transistors KT805 are used as power transistors. You can find a pair of such switches on the vertical deflection board. After full assembly, don't forget to attach heatsinks to these transistors. I took low-power switches from the MC31 color module. In my case, these are KT940S, although you can also use low-voltage switches like KT815, 817. I used imported 0.33 microfarad capacitors purely because they are smaller in size. Otherwise, you can find decent film capacitors with the required capacitance on TV boards. However, they are a bit larger in size. Output diodes need to be pulse diodes because the operating frequency of the circuit is high, and regular rectifier diodes won't work here. Fortunately, on the horizontal deflection board as well as the power supply, you can find quite decent pulse diodes of the KD226 series, which work perfectly at frequencies up to 50 kHz. They are distinguished by color coding. We need 4 similar KD226 diodes with the index V, G, D or E. Unfortunately, one of the diodes I'm using has a different reverse voltage than the others, but that's not critical. A DF90PC choke from the input filter will be used as the transformer. The core here is a 7x7, made of ferrite gradium 3000 in MS2. Initially, the choke contains 2 identical windings of 200 turns, each with 0.35 mm wire. First, we put it in boiling water for 3 to 5 minutes. The glue will weaken, and then you can easily disassemble the choke. Remove all the windings, but don't dispose of the wire, as we'll need it later. Also, carefully remove the plastic partition. Next, wind the primary winding onto the bare frame. It consists of 2 equivalent windings with a tap from the middle. Each side contains 15 turns. The winding is done with a 0.35 mm wire, folded 4 times. Thus, the primary winding consists of 30 turns with a tap from the middle, using 4 strands of 0.35 mm wire. To ensure equivalent winding, we wind both windings simultaneously. As a result, we get 4 taps. On the schematic and on the printed circuit board, the starting points of the winding are indicated by dots. All we need to do is connect the start of one winding to the end of the other, to create a center tap, where the power supply positive is applied. Before winding the secondary coil over the primary, we place insulation in several layers. Next, we wind the secondary coil with a wire of 0.3 to 0.35 mm. Although it can be smaller, the winding consists of 220 turns. In my case, fewer turns were wound, so the output voltage ended up being lower as well. The secondary winding is wound layer by layer. Each layer is insulated with Kapton tape or regular tape. Although the voltage here is not very high, so the layers might not need to be insulated at all. Before assembling the transformer, we remove the paper that initially formed the non-magnetic gap, and was placed under the outermost cores of the core. In our circuit, the gap is no longer needed. We install everything on the board, supply 12 volts from the lab power source to the input, and observe the inverter working. The no-load current is about 200 milliamps. That's quite a lot for such a circuit, but the switches are practically cold when idle. This simple and low-cost circuit will be relevant for fishermen, car enthusiasts, and adventurers who enjoy long trips. This circuit can simultaneously power a small lamp in a tent and charge a smartphone. This video is coming to an end. Please share it with your friends on social media. And soon there will definitely be a continuation with even more interesting designs, based on parts from old TVs. All necessary links, including the archive with boards for these projects, can be found in the description. That's all from me. As always, it was with you, and until next time, goodbye.